All right, joining us now from Washington, D.C. is political analyst Eric Ham. Thanks very much for joining us on Al Jazeera. What's making it difficult for both Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump to attract undecided voters? Because at this point, that may make all the difference.
That's certainly true. But what we're seeing in the United States, as the country has become more politically polarized, there just aren't any more votes that you can actually turn. And so what we're seeing now, as the polarization continues to creep up exponentially, it's becoming harder and harder to get people to actually cross over. And so that's why we're seeing a race that now is completely turned upside down, where you have Kamala Harris attempting to try to shore up her support among African-American men, a demographic that has voted overwhelmingly with Democratic presidential candidates to the tune of 85 to 92%, going all the way back to 1972. And why Donald Trump is actually trying to shore up his support among white women, a key demographic, perhaps the biggest prize in this election that he has won both in 2016 and in 2020.
Right, and looking at those demographics, specifically Kamala Harris, compared to the last election, Kamala Harris lags behind President Joe Biden's numbers, especially amongst black male voters. Biden had 85% of the vote back then. Polls at this point say Harris is at 70%. Is that because she's a woman?
Well, we don't really know the reason why. Of course, when Barack Obama spoke to men last week in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, he certainly intuited that that's why men aren't supporting Kamala Harris. But because we see Kamala Harris appears, based on polling data, to not only be losing the support of black men, but also Latino voters, and most importantly, Arab American voters, who are now who Trump is actually winning with about 4% of to Kamala Harris. And so I think what we're seeing right now is Kamala Harris is trying to show up all of the support. But where, again, she's actually doing very well, much better than expected, is Donald Trump is only leading among white women by 1 point. And so that's the biggest demographic voting today. And if Kamala Harris can keep that number, this could be a race where she could win. And of course, that alone would reset the entire political landscape going forward for at least a generation.
And trying to pick up some of these final votes, just weeks ahead of the election, how important is the state of Pennsylvania at this point? Campaigning continues there.
Pennsylvania is the bellwether state of this election, which means that Pennsylvania is going to be the barometer. Whoever wins Pennsylvania will likely win this election. That's why we see Kamala Harris has already made more than 10 trips there, as well as Donald Trump. That's why we see the overwhelming lion's share of their campaign monies being spent in Pennsylvania. It's a state that clearly would not only determine this election, but so goes Pennsylvania. Likely also so goes that vaunted blue wall of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So Donald Trump is hoping to flip Pennsylvania, and that will be the first domino to fall that could also turn Michigan and Wisconsin blue. And remember, if we go back to 2016, that's what Donald Trump did to actually win the White House then.
All right, Eric Ham, thanks very much for your thoughts and joining us on Al Jazeera. Eric Ham is a political analyst speaking to us from Washington, D.C.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.